we believe the way we earn money should look one way. Or, this is a big one, I have a law degree. I have a medical degree. This is what I have to do, right? Because again, you said you were going to med school and you were going to become a doctor. It doesn't have to look the same way it looked last year or another generation, right? You can change that or flex that in a way that is earning in your way. But same with saving. When we open ourselves up to the possibility of something different, it changes the way we look at it. It changes the way we think about it. We have this grip. We have this grip on everything we do in life, if we're really honest. In our money, it just seems a little bit tighter because no one has ever taught about earning and saving and growing in our values.
Welcome back to the Anniston Riekstins Show. You are in for a treat today, as I know you just heard me talk all about Corree Roofener. Corree, I am so excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, I am ecstatic. Honestly, I've just got like bubbles of energy in me right now.
I'm just always so excited to talk to you. And I keep feeling like, I know we've talked about this before when I was on your podcast. There definitely is like a remembrance there. You know, when you meet people, and there's some people you meet that you're like, nope, definitely meeting them for the first time. Definitely do not know that person. But then there's some people who you are technically meeting for the first time, but you really don't feel like you are.
Agreed. 100%. There's just like this cellular level of, she just feels like home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you do. You feel like home. And you're a very pure spirit. And your intention is pure, and I can feel that. And I love Corree's podcast, The Courage Coalition, is incredible. And I've had the honor of being interviewed on her podcast and listening to her podcast. And you, again, like there's nothing but pure intention there to support and to serve. And because you clearly you just love what you're doing. And I think that is the most powerful kind of work that you can do, is when you're showing up in that pure intention and you're allowing other people to be in your energy and in your space. So
I love it.
All right. Well, I want to dive right in because I have a lot of things I want to talk about. We have never on the Anniston Riekstins Show thus far had anyone with your particular skill set. We haven't had an episode where we've really honed in and talked like the real as it relates to money, as it relates to women and their finances, as it relates to all the things that are happening underneath the surface that are driving the results. So before we dive into really what it is that your expertise is and what you teach, I would love for you to share your story and just what inspired you to become a financial foundation coach and to work with people in this area.
Well, it's a very messy roller coaster, right? And I know that is exactly why, right? Is the pain and the purpose and all those things that we hear, all the little quibs about, is that I grew up with no understanding of money. None, zero, zilch, just that there was never enough. Just that's it. There's never enough. And in high school, I took a personal finance class and I loved it. And math was always my favorite class. I'm not going to lie. It was my favorite class. But this personal finance class touched on something different. You know, we did our own taxes and it's like, oh, this makes sense to me. My brain is so happy right now. And then I let it be, honestly. I just let it be because life was happening. And I was in college doing a completely different subject matter. And we had to do business accounting, business bookkeeping as one of our prerequisites. And again, I just fell in love with it. But our culture, society says you choose a path and you finish. And so I finished my path. And I never worked in that field again. But later on in life, I was given an opportunity to do some bookkeeping, financing, accounting for a family member. And I thought, you know what, this would be an amazing side gig. I was at home full time at this time. And I thought, yes, let's do this. And so I went through and did my bookkeeping certification at the local community college. And just, it just felt like at home. I was like, this makes sense to me. But it was really just that for like 15 years. I was just doing this. I had 2 clients. It felt good. I was a stay-at-home mom, all the things. And then life happened, and we decided that we were going to change things up. How can we change things up? And I just looked at my husband one day and I said, I'll build the business. I'll build what I'm currently doing to a full-time income, and that will release you from being our full-time income. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And we moved to Montana. So we moved to Montana, and I began that process. And so I've been doing this full-time for about 3 years, or I should say, as our full-time income, because I don't work full-time and I don't ever want to work full-time. Mm-hmm. And it has developed to what it is today. It wasn't, at the beginning, I had this really firm grip on what it was going to look like, right? I was going to build it. I was going to have this many clients. We were going to make this much money, and this is how it was going to look. And what happened is I realized, one, that did not align with who I am. It felt very, very just disconnected. And 2, the clients I was gaining and growing with had so many stories around their business bookkeeping, their business finances. But when I started connecting with them and when I started talking to them, which were always the women that were willing to have these conversations, it was more than that. It was, I'm really scared to ask that question of my CPA. I'm like, you're scared? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they tell me I'm, why don't you know that you're a business owner? They brought in this shame. And that is what I began to realize was the cultural norm in the finance sector is that it's black and white. And if you don't know it, then quit asking questions. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, wow. That's like the mommy lion roared out in me. I was like, no, this is not the way it's going to be. I'm going to tell you exactly what to ask, and you pay them so that you get the answer. Mm-hmm. And I began creating an environment of wanting more answers, wanting more questions, having curiosity. And it felt so good, and it felt right. Mm-hmm. But again, it was mainly always women. Mm. But it's beginning to change. Mm-hmm. It's beginning to change. So that's where it came from. It did not come from this grand plan. It was really
Never does.
Nope, really. It just came from the universe saying, oh, look, this person needs you, or, this is what you can do. And I do believe I'm really easy to talk to. Mm-hmm. And I provide a space that creates acceptance. Yeah. I think that's part of the beauty of it is that I don't teach or coach, because really any accounting position is just a coaching position, right? It's just teaching people, like, we have got to lessen your bottom line. We have got to increase expenses. We've got to increase income. And then taking apart those financial statements so that we understand where we need to be next. You need to invest more in your 401k. We don't want to pay this money to the IRS, so let's pay it to you, right? Yeah. It's really having just those girl to girl, client to client, whatever you want to look at, conversations about where can you set yourself up best this year to pay the least, because I'm not against paying taxes. It's part of our right and it's part of our responsibility, but I definitely don't want to pay more than I have to.
Right.
Right?
100%. Well, be with my love of mindset and personal development and neuroscience and really understanding that it is our beliefs that ultimately shape our reality, right? That's the way our brains function. And that we all typically inherit our core money beliefs. Absolutely. That then play out, right? They play out. We're wearing that lens, and then our view of our finances look like that. And for me, I didn't necessarily, my parents did a really great job of managing, and they always wanted to keep the stress away from us. Like I didn't see a lot of like money concern and money issues. I would see it sometimes just in like the behaviors or like their stress levels, but I also didn't know a lot. Like, so because I didn't have a lot of experience, I had the story that I don't understand money. Like it's above my pay grade. Does that make any sense? So I wasn't comfortable in learning about investments, and like I almost like would avoid it like the plague. Like I don't even want to look at that stuff. I don't want to read a book on that. It became this weird like avoidance. Do you see that a lot with the women and men that you work with?
100%, but it's definitely more women. And I just want to take a step back, because what you're explaining is the perfect example. Because if we think back to when our belief systems were created, so young childhood, right? 6, 7, 8 years old. Even if money was not something that was talked about, it was talked about non-verbally. Yes. It was talked about in things like, each month when it's time to pay the bills, your dad's stress level just got higher, or your mom started getting really quiet or touchy.
Yeah.
Right? It was talked about in things like conversations that had nothing to do with money, but did. Here's a good one. My dad's boss is a cold-hearted jerk.
Yeah.
Who is your dad's boss? He has money. He has a company. All of a sudden, we believe, and everyone's like, that's not true. Yes, it is. We believe that money is bad, because when we were young and we had no concept of what we were hearing, feeling, or being told, we were hearing, feeling, and being told things about money, and we've carried them. We've carried them our entire life, because we talk about scarcity and abundance in one way: not enough money and too much money, or enough money and not enough money. That's it. But scarcity and abundance is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's how we believe we're able to attract money, as you like to talk about, right? Like attraction, how we think about money is just it's an action. And we have the right to earn money. We have the God-given birthright to earn money and create abundance. But our beliefs tend to stop that.
Yeah.
About how it looks.
Yes.
About how it feels. About our value and our worth in it, right? Because it all comes down to our core values. And that's what people hear me talk about on a regular basis, is that our money story is as unique as our thumbprint, because our thumbprint is as unique as our individual core values. What is abundance to me is not going to be abundance to you, Anniston. What is abundance to me is not abundance to my husband. Right? We are a couple, but we have two different core value sets, and abundance means something different to each of us. And so clarity is literally the answer. What does the money mean to me? What do I want for it? What is it? What does the future look like? Right? Same with spending, because as women, that's where we get caught up, right? We've spent too much. I'm not worthy. I'm never going to understand this. I've screwed up again, right? These are the conversations. But what if we stopped and just realized that spending is just a behavior, and we can change that? But we only change it when we provide emotion, and the emotion comes from those core values.
So much to unpack. So much to unpack with what you just said, but I 100% agree. And I think that a lot of it is first awareness, I would imagine. Yes. And I would imagine that that's where you start with your clients. So how do you suggest, if for any of the women that are listening to this episode, which I know many of them are like, great, Corree, amazing. So how do I find out my unique money thumbprint in my unique story? Like, how would you guide someone to that?
Well, I mean, there's two different ways, and one is obviously business related and one is very much personal related. But one of the things I love to remind people is how we do one is usually how we do the other. They look a little different because business is business and personal is personal, but our beliefs affect both almost unanimously, right? Like it's almost like this. So we have to, one, get clarity. So what are our beliefs about money? What are those things that we talk about? Because when people talk about business coaching or financial coaching, they think it's going to look like a bunch of spreadsheets and a bunch of black and white, and there could be nothing further from the truth for me. I love the gray in that very unique way that you specifically, which is why I don't do a lot of group coaching. I only do one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
Because our stories are so individual. So we go back and we just start like, what was your money story at 6? What's the first thing you remember about money? What's the second thing you remember about money? And then our core values. What is important to you? Because you cannot get clarity in understanding why you're earning. Because if you don't know why you're earning, there is absolutely no basis for your earning, which means you're not attracting it. And then why are you spending? And does that really align with who you want to be and want to become, that legacy that you're leaving, right? And there's not a wrong or right way here. And that's the key, is everyone has been made to believe that there is a right way and a wrong way. It is absolutely not. And then knowledge. That's how we grow our money, is in knowledge. And again, I'm not going to teach you about stocks and bonds. I'm going to teach you about what is that legacy. And I'm going to give you a perfect example here. I have a male client.
Okay.
And I love him. Oh my gosh. He's a creative and he makes me smile. And I was doing actual couples coaching with him and his wife. And he said to me, I know that I'm supposed to be saving for retirement, but investing in a portfolio, a stock and bond, will put me through the roof. Feels so disconnected. And I'm like, okay. And he goes,
Yeah.
What do you mean, okay? And I said, okay, so what lights you up? How are we going to invest your money in a way that really feels aligned to you? He's a super successful entrepreneur, and he has over $1 million in rare flowers.
That's amazing.
I said, well, there's your answer. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, that is your legacy. That is your investment. That is what you're doing to leave with your family. I said, but the question is do you have a system in place? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, who is going to take care of those and or sell those to the brokers you have lined up if something happens to you? And so it was just creating clarity around what he was already doing. And all of a sudden he was like, he could breathe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That is brilliant, first of all. And I'm like cheering on the inside because for a very long time, Rudy and I both, we are smart individuals. We are intelligent. We can read instruction and someone says, you need to invest this and you need to do this. But I have always had this internal resistance to investing our money into things that don't light me up.
Yeah.
Like we once had an opportunity, and we've gone down a couple of little rabbit holes many, many years ago where we're like, okay, this is when like everyone was wanting to become a seller on Amazon. They're like, just buy a random product that is inconsequential, like a soup ladle or something, and then you sell that on Amazon, and then you make all this money. And I'm like, okay, great, but none of it did not light me up. Right. There was no part of that actually made me excited. Could it have made us money? Sure. But there was no part of that process that was like, yay. Like I had to like should my way forward every single step. And sure enough, like it didn't really go anywhere because I wasn't intrinsically motivated. But as it relates to, for instance, like Rudy and I like to invest in property, especially property in places we like to be that could eventually be a retreat space or a place for us to, like, that lights me up all day long. And so how do you coach I mean, as it relates, because there is that fine line, right? You need to make sound, you need to set yourself up and build a structure and a foundation, as you were saying, that will be supportive of your financial freedom, because financial freedom requires structure too.
Yeah.
But without like selling your soul.
Yes, absolutely. And when you say that out loud, it's not just about our investing that we talk about this, because how many of us are in those jobs that we are selling our soul to because we make the right amount, we support all the things, all the should-haves, the should-haves, the should-haves. So there's definitely traditional coaching because having a diversified portfolio is just smart. It's just responsible. But it doesn't have to look like your dad's.
Yes.
Or your mom's, right? Even, there's many brilliant female generations of financial people behind us. And even though the story for us is the majority of women is not that way, if someone has a mom that was really good with money, she believes, well, my mom did it this way, right? That's that female to female. So I should do it this way. And so it's really just getting clear again. Okay, if you cannot invest in a 401k, can you invest in a company that lights you up, right? Change the name of it, change the emotion attached to it, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes it's just that. It's not this far away thing. It's just like, but what, do startups really just make you feel good? Like maybe you should start investing in some startups. There's so many ways we can do investing. I believe that my personal opinion for my legacy is that a part of our money will always be in stocks and bonds because of the potential for growth. And like you said, financial freedom does have structure. But I'm also with you that like real estate is where I've made the most money. And so you can't take that from me because it is my evidence, right? And that's one of the things we talk a lot about when I'm coaching or even in business. Let's collect the evidence. Your financial statements are your evidence. Let's collect that and see what has already happened, because that is how we build. That's how we either pivot and change or just grow in trajectory. And that when I say grow in trajectory, doesn't necessarily mean numbers. It means purpose, right? Because a lot of people that I work with, believe it or not, have these side passions. And so they want to maybe grow their business to fund this side passion, right? And so how do we make that happen? How can you fund this thing that you want to grow, but still do? Because when we work in a way, when we earn in a way that is in our strengths, again, the energy comes from that, right? Because it's what we know, it's what we can talk about forever. It's what we draw in. And so we can't just let that be, but we can love it and hold it and grow it right next to that other thing that is filling us up on the side or potentially earning money, because it's a strength too. But we believe that the way we earn money should look one way. Or, this is a big one, I have a law degree. I have a medical degree. This is what I have to do, right? Because again, you said you were going to med school and you were going to become a doctor. But doesn't mean that's how it doesn't have to look the same way it looked last year or another generation, right? You can change that or flex that in a way that is earning in your way, but same with saving. And that's just, I think that's the thing, is that when we open ourselves up to the possibility of something different, it changes the way we look at it. It changes the way we think about it. We have this grip. We have this grip on everything we do in life, if we're really honest. But in our money, it just seems a little bit tighter because no one has ever taught about earning and saving and growing in our values. It's been, the stock market. and this and that. And real estate's been somewhat accepted, but let's be honest, it's really not the most accepted. It's a risk, and risks are not supposed to be a part of your portfolio in that fashion. But again, if your evidence says this is where I have always made the most money, why would you steer away from that?
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think from my point of view and in my life experience, what I've seen from working with people is that abundance and money is a natural byproduct of alignment, of being aligned with what lights you up. And now there's a differentiator there, though, because you might assume I mean that then your purpose is your paycheck. And that is not accurate, because sometimes for some people, I do think, what you focus on in your awareness will expand for you, and likely, and what happens a lot of times is the longer that you put your focus and awareness and energy into those activities or areas that are aligned with your purpose, it does become bigger and bigger and bigger in your life, which then could become a job or a business or a thriving business. But oftentimes it can look like you're in a job, you're making money, you have an investor, right, that is paying you with a W-2, but then you've got this thing that you do on the side that you love, and that lights you up. It fills your cup, so that when you show up, you don't expect that from your work. Your work is it is your investor that allows you to do the thing that you love. But then other random opportunities for abundance come to you. Like it becomes, because you're not so honed in and focused in fear around lack and scarcity, and your attention is mostly on creating and on just doing what you love, it naturally comes. Yeah. Do you see that in your clients?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it also has to do with releasing the should have, what this should look like, right?
Yes.
Because again, I'll just go from example, because I think most people, they can attach to that, right? So I have a client, and super successful family attorney. And that's a service for her, right? Is providing good quality legal service for families in some of their darkest days.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she is so good at it. But believe it or not, she's an art major. And in the back of her head, she's always had this dream to create art. And she just didn't know what that looked like, because, again, everything looked a certain way, and the family, did this and this and this. And randomly, 2 years ago, someone gave her a tattoo gun. And she's like, wow. And so she started tattooing oranges. Yes, she started, because it's very similar to the human skin, right?
Yeah.
And she started becoming really passionate about this. And so last year, she opened up her own tattoo shop. Now, she's still a practicing attorney.
Yep.
She split her office, which was a real estate investment. Okay. So I can go 100 folds with this. She decided to buy her office building years and years ago. Yeah. She was able to split it. She still practices law. And then she's now building this tattoo shop, and it lights her up, which draws in so much more clients, either from the legal side and or from the tattoo side.
Yeah.
And she's this very soft-spoken, feminine female. You would never guess it in a million years that she's a tattooist, right? Because we all have this preconceived idea of what they look like. And she is showing her children this different way, this legacy of living true to yourself. Mm-hmm. I think, personally, that's the gift right there.
Yeah. And imagine if I think sometimes we see other people, and again, everyone has a different path. They have a different way of getting where they're going, and you have to honor where you're at. But I think the whole philosophy of like, burn the boats, like quit your job and just run towards it. Like it can work for some people, but I think there needs to be a level of awareness there of where are you at around lack and scarcity? Because the minute you cut yourself off from what feels secure, because nothing ever really is secure. Even if you work for a company, we know this, like it's not necessarily secure, but what feels regular and consistent, where you go from feeling secure and safe, which is an absolute need in order for us to access the higher realms of Maslow's hierarchy, right? Where we start getting into purpose and we start getting into the things that light us up. We need to feel safe and secure. So you have to be honest with yourself. Like, how do I feel right now? And how will I feel when I walk away from that? And if I know myself, if I'm loving enough to myself, and I know that putting myself in that position is going to make me shrink and be in fear, and immediately what was supposed to be fun and joyful becomes another source of fear for me. Is that really the right way? And for Rudy and I, we know this about us, like safety and security is important. And so in our relationship, it's kind of happened naturally without us having to premeditate it. But we call it passing the baton, because there have been times when he was building the business and I had the consistency, right? I held the baton then. Then it was like, once he built the business up to a certain point, then it was like, okay, let me pass the baton. Now it's his turn to hold down the fort while I build. And I think as a couple and that's a really beautiful dance that you can play together. And that's really like teaming out financially, I think. So to allow yourselves to grow and expand in a safe container. And so I'm curious, like, from your perspective, because I'm sure you deal with some entrepreneurs, and a lot of the women that are listening to this are entrepreneurial, they are purpose-driven, they have a goal, a dream, they know they have a mission, but they also know that it's going to require them to step out. So how would you recommend they approach that process financially?
Well, I think you highlighted this beautifully just now, and it's really asking yourself, not from a scarcity mindset, but what is that bottom level that I can still move forward and go forth, but know that there's going to be a reduction. I'm not going to say any of the other words. There's going to be a reduction in how the life looks right now if I walk away from this job. Okay. Yes. What if you don't walk away from the job? Then there's going to be a reduction in your time, right? Because if you build one while you're doing another, then it's a time, need. So it's always asking, because I like get this 100%. Most people, when they're in a certain place in life, that comfort zone becomes their boundaries, right? Because we're like, I just can't tell my kids no, or I just can't live in that small of a house. And some of that is mindset, 100%, and stories and values and beliefs, and we can go 100 million years. But it's asking yourself, how important is this to you? Like, where, and I'm going to go back again to their core values. Does Starbucks every day lead to your core values? Because for some people it does. There's no judgment there.
So true.
It's just asking, does it truly align with that? And if it doesn't, then we're not spending in that core value list, which means we're not going to be aligned. We're not earning in that core value list. Chad and I are, like you said, we are that burn it down people. And people ask why, how. It doesn't even make sense to us that you could do this. And all I can say is because Chad and I are our safety net. Mm-hmm. As long as we have each other, if we have our family, we know that we can do whatever we need to do, right? But for some people, that's not what they're currently in, or they've currently built, or even what feels safe. Because money, again, back to 6, 7, 8 years of age, was taught that money creates safety. Money creates warmth. Money creates value. Money creates worth. Money is love. That's a big one, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for Chad and I, we were raised by single moms. Money was never a part of our worth or our love. And we were teenagers when we had our first child. So we were poor parents, right? Like we've
Right.
built through that. And so we had just this different perception that as long as we've got each other, we are a unit, we can make this work. But we were clear about that. We did the hard numbers ahead of time. Like, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be tough. We have lived in a very abundant financial place for 15 years, right? So we are going to be taking 10 steps back, coming back in. Is it worth it? And it was a hell yes. Like freedom
Because of your values.
Yes, because of our values, because we knew that the current situation, even though financially successful, was relationally destroying us. Our health was being destroyed, and our dynamic. And that is not what we wanted to leave our children.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a hard yes. But it doesn't mean it's the hard yes for anybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's where I go back to that core values and that just be true to yourself. Who are you? And don't put, if you need, not want, if you need a certain level of home to even function, then be honest with yourself about that. Don't make it about a worth thing or that you're high maintenance or any of those things. Just be honest, because if you're honest, then you can work to that next step of what it looks like to get to where you want to go. I think that for so many people, we still live in this version of somebody else's life, right? We're not truly being honest with what our life looks like, what we want in life. And it's easy to go back there. We all do it. But it's also very interesting if you just have those conversations about what is, and when I say conversations, I'm asking, like, if you're married with your spouse, what does the future look like for you? You know, and you guys don't have to agree, right? You do not have to agree. But when there's these honest conversations, it's amazing the dance that starts to happen, as you talked about the baton, because you want your spouse's dreams to come true. You want them to have joy in life and all those things. And so it's just this conversation and this clarity. Once again, I'm going to keep using that word, but being so extremely intentional in everything that you do around those core values. It's just asking ourselves, does this fall under my core values? You know, for Chad and I, we gave birth to our nonprofit this year, and we committed to doing all the finances for the first year. Like, no admin finances were coming out of the money that we earned. And that was a hard, what do I say? Like, it was a hard yes, because we are still building. But at the same time, it was this extremely easy yes, because purpose, service, that kind of stuff is a hard core value for me. So I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. Right? And we have figured it out.
I really like how you approach, and I like that you start with the values, because it really, in doing that, you outcomes your definition of wealth, right? And success. And for Rudy and I, for me individually, like, freedom is one of my core values. Yeah. And what's interesting is, so like when I'm meditating in the morning and I'm aligning my frequency, I'm not aligning to abundance. I'm actually aligning to freedom, because that's really at the core of where I make a lot of my money decisions, is that. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to be, aligning my frequency with that which I want, then go for what I really want, which is freedom. And then let's let God bring it in the form that it needs to come. And so when we are making financial decisions, it is really interesting how, when you become the observer of your mind and you can see how the ego works, the ego's job, it will keep you on that hamster wheel of more. Oh, but I'll be happy when you get the bigger house. And you're like, oh my God, I haven't, and you're happy for like a minute. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, if only we had like another bedroom, or if only we had and then all of a sudden what was so perfect is no longer perfect anymore, because your ego's telling you need more. Right. And Rudy and I, when you're working and you're expanding your finances and you're expanding your way of living, there's there's a degree that you can expand to that's actually going to create a difference in your life that will maybe create more freedom for you, or maybe a core value for you is family and connection, and you want a place that people can come and gather, and that's the reason why you want it. But at a certain point, more doesn't equal more. It just it's almost like empty more. And so we have been in a position, for instance, now where we could have bought another home. We could have upgraded a lot of areas of our life, but we kind of learned when we were young, like as we were getting more money, we get a better car. But then the freedom wasn't there. I actually think sometimes living below your means, it actually creates more freedom and more abundance because you're not in stress or in fear or in whatever. So I think basically all that is to say, like, I love how you approach it, because that will actually allow you to create the decisions that are going to lead to the feelings and the quality of life that you want to have.
Yeah.
Right?
You're giving yourself an opportunity to change your mind.
Yes. Yes.
That's really what it comes down to when you talk about those things, is that you are giving yourself an opportunity to change your mind. When we live in those core values, it's not about the next best thing. It's about, okay, where does this align with who I truly am and why? And it's funny because when you start doing that, you actually start realizing where you've not like, oh, I should have, but oh, I really don't need this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I think, my car is a perfect example. You talked about cars. My car will be 10 years old this year. And I told Chad the other day, I said, it has got to last another 10 years. He's like, there's no way. I said, you don't want a car payment.
Yeah.
Right? Because that money for me has other jobs that are so important to me. And I'm like, okay, then I'm just going to drive the farm truck. Right? Because it's just, I have created this emotion, this value, this belief of where my money fills me up the most. It's a knowledge, it's a tool. And there's very little that will deter from that, right? Like it is like right now on my list is Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
And I know what it's going to cost. So every time I don't put money in that savings account, it's an emotional right to my heart, because I'm like, oh, okay, it's just one more month away.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just telling our money where to go. Again, it does not have a right or wrong way. It's just your way. But be honest with yourself, because it's really easy to get sucked up in the circle of what everybody else is doing. No, I want to know what's truly honest to you. What is your truth? And then go for it. All in.
Well, I have this vision. I'll share this vision with you. Here's my vision. And this was a big shift for me. And for a long time, I had a lot of worthiness issues around money. And when it really showed itself was when we had more money than I had ever had. Because a lot of it came up for me, like as we had the money, but then I wouldn't feel worthy of the thing. Or I would be like, oh no, we couldn't possibly, you know what I mean? So there was a contradiction in my worthiness. But I do believe that we are in an incredible time. It's an incredible time to be alive. And I know it can look hard and there's a lot of change, but I actually believe we are at the crux, or in the beginning of the crux stages of a massive shift of power, where the feminine is rising. Women are waking up, they are remembering, and there needs to be a rebalancing, because we need both, right? We need masculine and we need feminine, lots and lots of women in power. We need lots of women who have a lot of money. We need billionaire females who are open-hearted and who are in their purpose, who can become financiers for other women, who have missions and have projects and have companies and have initiatives that are going to change the world. Yeah. And I remember feeling, I was having moments when I was feeling like I really don't want to deal with this. Like I really don't want to heal this aspect of myself that I was reminded that you need to. Like, it's your responsibility, because I believe that we are limitless beings. I believe that money is energy and it's a current. It's why it's meant to flow. That's why it's called currency. And I believe that when you become aware of your money story, and you realize that it is within your power, not only that, but it is yours to steward and yours to alchemize and change, that you can experience a limitless amount of abundance, which is going to flow through you and then to others in the most miraculous ways.
Yeah.
I'm saying all of this to say that for those of you that are listening, and if you are saying, yeah, I know I have a money story. Yeah, I know I have some more than this issues, or what Corree said, or what Anniston said, like, don't just pass this over, because it's possible that you are meant to be someone who heals this, that you are meant to be someone who steps forward in your divine inheritance. And so you can make it possible for all of the others, because it's going to take a lot of people. It's going to take an army. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. And
Absolutely.
we need balanced, we need some heart back in our finance systems, so that we can start to bring equality and unity into places that have been grossly underrepresented and underserved. So I love what you're doing. So if someone's listening to this and they're saying, Corree, I really want to work with you. How do I work with you? What do I do? So can you explain all the ways that you can support people?
Oh, absolutely. And I have to just say really quick, Anniston, when you're talking about that, someone recently said you can't out legislate this. You can't.
No.
And what I want to say is you can't out balance sheet this.
Mm-mm.
This is really coming back to the humanness of
Yes.
who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, you can work with me one-on-one coaching. I do one-on-one coaching. I don't do group coaching. I just do one-on-one. And it's usually like a 4 to 6 week program. It really depends on what they're looking for. And then I do accounting. We have a CAS, a client accounting system firm that we have several clients. And, you know, all entrepreneurs, I don't do corporations. This is for that high.
And do you work with clients that are out of state, or do they need to be just all over?
I don't actually, it's funny. We're in Northwest Montana. I don't have one client in Northwest Montana.
Okay, well, there we go.
So no, I have clients all over the country, from Hawaii to Maine. And that's the beauty of this world that we live in today, is that we can do this. And so if what I do is a high touch connection. I work one-on-one. I have coaching clients with my bookkeeping clients, coaching calls once a quarter. We really dive into what you're building, and then the numbers support what you're building. So I'm not a transactional person. I am definitely a relational person.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, you can help me with the foundation too if you want to work with me and get to know me more about the nonprofit we started this year. There's many ways to work with us as a family, or because this is a family business.
We didn't even have a chance to talk about your incredible track. Well, before we get off, because we've got a couple more minutes. I know we were already gone long, but I mean, okay. So just quickly, I want you to share what you did this year, because to me, it was just so absolutely incredible, inspiring, and also at the simultaneously, I was like watching this journey, and I was like, she's the bravest person I know. I mean, the fact that how you were showing up, but what you were doing it for.
Yeah. So just as you know, in summary, one of my core values is faith and spirituality and service. And I have this deep connection to the foster care system. And so when we moved to Montana, I knew our time as a foster family was done. I just didn't know, I knew we weren't done, and I didn't know what that looked like. And in the last year and a half, this vision, this feeling, this alignment came to me that we are to create a nonprofit that helps children who are aging out of the system. And what most people don't know is that children turn 18 when they're in foster care and are pretty much told good luck. If they weren't adopted and they're just in a foster placement, there's very few foster placements that continue a relationship with them at that point. They're off, and the agency will give them a $250 check and say good luck. There's a lot of nonprofits that deal with college classes and stuff like that. But the problem is that we have not got these kids and started healing and breaking cycles earlier than when now they get all the decisions. So they've gone from making no decisions for themselves to making all the decisions for themselves. Because in foster care, you make no decisions for yourself. You can't even choose your haircut. Okay? So, and then you make all the decisions. And we're like, this is where it's at. And so we just gave birth to a nonprofit, not perfectly, just messy in our love and in our spirit. And the way we believed that we could bring the most awareness was in action, right? And Chad and I love hiking mountains. And so we created Fostering the Summit based on the fact that the summit is a part of the story for these kids, and they get to climb the mountain the way that they see fit. And so we hiked 100 miles, Tour de Mont Blanc in France, Switzerland, and Italy. And just really 100 miles just to show people what it feels like to be put out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because we were being put out of our comfort zone, right? Not only physically, but we didn't know where we would sleep each night. We had hostels and reservations, but we'd never been there. We were walking through a door for the first time, which is how these kiddos feel. Into a room, into a bed, into smells that we've never experienced. Food was being put in front of us that we had never ate before. And these are the little things that we forget about for these kiddos. So that is the why. And we just hope to grow a blueprint. Our dream is to grow a blueprint of a home that supports these kids in those last 4 years that can be duplicated any state in the country.
I love your dream. I love your vision. And I have no doubt that you are going to change so many lives. So many lives. So thank you for showing up, to you and Chad, and for inspiring other people to just follow these nudges and these little inklings and ideas that you get, because that's usually how it shows up. The greatest things that will change the world always show up as just a little idea that you got one day. Yeah. And you show so beautifully what that looks like to put it into action and just to do it and to live a big life and to invest where you find value. Yeah. And so I will link all of those things in the show notes. Corree, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure. I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you so much, Anniston. And the feelings are completely mutual. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. And for all of you tuning in today, we love you. We see you. And I'll catch you on the next episode.